Well, hey there, folks. Welcome to the Roundup. We are a Cowboy State Daily podcast, and we feature really interesting people here in the Cowboy State. And we have been so blessed for over a year now. We've been able to bring you conversations with people who have made a difference in their communities, in the state, who are out there representing Wyoming in just the best ways. And so today, we get a chance to talk to one of the most influential legislators here in Wyoming. He spent 28 years in the Wyoming legislature in both the House and the Senate, which is phenomenal. But he's got a great Wyoming origin story, and I love that. So most people who follow Cowboy State Daily have heard the name Eli Bebout, and here we are, the man himself in person. Eli Bebout. Eli, we're so glad you were able to join us today on the Roundup. How are you?
Well, good afternoon. It's really great to be here with you, Wendy. Look forward to our conversation, and of course, Cowboy Daily has been a real success for our state and what they bring to the viewers and the unique way they do it in the business and what they do. So it's good to be part of it. I'm just looking forward to our conversation.
This is going to be a fun conversation. And thank you so much. We are so proud of the model that we have built with Cowboy State Daily because not only does it bring real news that actually affects people in and the small town things as well, but those real issues that are important to people, but those conversations with people like you, Eli, who have made such an impact here in the state. Eli, you are a Wyoming native of the Wyoming natives. I mean, how great is it that you've been able to spend your entire life here? Tell me about growing up. Folks, he grew up in Bear Oil. There's not a lot of people
Well,
that can say they grew up in Bear Oil.
growing up is a stretch. My mom and dad were, after the war, dad took a job in Bear Oil working for Sinclair Oil Refinery Company. And so I happened to be born in Rawlins. It was an interesting place to live, Bear Oil. The accommodations were not exactly what you would expect to be good for a young mother like my mom raising not only me, but my sister Ruby, it was coming along. And so in fact, it came to the point where mom said, Pa, I'm going to go to Fremont County. If you want to stay here, you do, but we're going to move to Fremont County. So actually, I was only in Barrow for a little bit, and we decided to move. And my dad was smarter than he made the right choice. He said, "I'm going with you, Ma." And so we moved to Shoshoni. And so I was really raised in Shoshoni with my brother Nick and my sister Ruby Dee.
And so Shoshone, you graduated from Shoshone High School, but Shoshone was probably even smaller then than it is now, I'm guessing.
It was, well, back then it was a lot different in rural America. What we had in Shoshone was and it was that way all around our country. We had a grocery store, we had a movie theater, we had a Golden Rule drugstore, Gamble's. We had all of that. And, rural America, one of the things that I don't like about what's going on in our country is that we're losing that part of what we do. And so Shoshone today, much different than back then. And all we have today are a couple of pit stops, which are really neat for the local community and all that. But no, that small town flavor is gone. But it was great being raised there, and it was a lot of fun. Participated in sports and Fremont County Shoshone Wranglers. Here we go.
That's great. I guess I misspoke then in that way because you're right. I remember when I was in high school coming through, every time you came through came through Shoshone, you had to stop at the drugstore and get a milkshake. That was a must stop.
Oh yeah, and yeah, and as a kid, we would go the drugstore you would stop at was across the street. I would go to the one on the other side and get a cherry Coke. But that's small town America, and it was wonderful to be there and be part of and be raised in that environment.
Well, I'm so glad that you were able to have that experience growing up. Eli, when you grew up and you had a wonderful childhood in Shoshone, you made the decision to leave Shoshone, to leave Wyoming, and you decided to go into the Air Force Academy. What was behind your decision to do that? Because
Well,
that's a major honor.
that was a difficult time for our country and the Vietnam War going on. And as a kid, there was three things I always wanted to do. I always wanted to be a pilot and preferably fly a jet pilot, and the fighter jet. And the other thing was the other two were one be a doctor, and the third one be an electrical engineer, which fortunately was able to achieve. So, and then I was thinking about where would I do that if I wanted to fly? And of course, the academies are always. I have a great respect for our country. I think that all of us are patriots, and I love our country. I mean, I wanted to serve, and I thought if I'm going to serve, I ought to do it the way I wanted to. So I said, why would I walk and go to the West Point? Why would I walk when I can fly? So fortunate enough, I was able to get into the academy. Spent 3 years there. Did not graduate. That's one of those things that happen in school, and left there and went to the University of Wyoming, where I finished and got my degree in electrical engineering.
And the University of Wyoming, of course, we are all so proud of that institution here. You left University of Wyoming with your, like you say, degree in electrical engineering, and that took you some really interesting places. That kind of launched your career in ways that you didn't expect, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. And one other thing about being from Shoshoni is, and my brother, they didn't have girls' sports, or Ruby Dee would have probably been in there, but we were fortunate enough to be athletes. And so I had a full scholarship. You had to go through the appointment process to the academy, but I was a basketball player there. And the good old University of Wyoming, when I left, Coach Stranding said, Eli, we think you can help our program. And back then we had the redshirt year. And so he said, come to Wyoming, we'll take care of you for a couple of years and join our team. So that was another bonus, be able to be a Wyoming Cowboy, play on the WAC champions, by the way, in 68, 69. So that was a real milestone of my young life back then. And then, of course, after that, graduating and degree in engineering and electrical engineering, and I thought about what to do, and I've always been intrigued by the oil business. And so I took a job with Shell Oil in Denver, and it was a good move. It was a lot of fun.
And Shell Oil in Denver at the time, I'm sure that was, I'm guessing, a big part of the oil boom at that time. There was a lot of exploration going on.
It was, and kid from Shoshone, you have to understand, although when I was at the academy, we traveled a lot, and when well, at Laramie, I did as well, but all of a sudden, I have an office downtown Denver on the 15th floor or whatever, 17th and Broadway. And so it was a young time and a young person's life, and it was really a great learning experience. But after a couple, 3 years, it just the corporate culture, and I just didn't quite see eye to eye. So I decided it was time for a career change, and so I made a move into. I had a chance to move elsewhere in the oil business, but I decided I wanted to stay in Denver, and so I took a job with a real estate development company right there locally in Denver.
Real estate development is quite a difference from electrical engineering and the oil industry. What was it about that move that appealed to you?
Well, the thing about being an engineer and why it's such a good degree is you learn a lot of things about how to deal with numbers, math, and all of that, which is what I always enjoyed. So when I shifted from being an engineer in the oil business, I was really an engineer and doing contracts and stuff in the development business. So the premise of my education really set me up to be able to do both, and it was a really good move. And the neat thing about it, and is that I was there a couple, 3 years, and they had a chance and wanted me to go to the southeastern part of our country into Atlanta, where they were having some difficulty in a big area, a lot of projects, and run it. And I thought, wow, that's why not? So I'm a young guy. I could go to Atlanta, and so I took the job. A week later, Wendy, a week later, my brother Nick gets drafted by the Atlanta Falcons. And so whoop-de-doo, no kidding. And there we were together. He was married, I wasn't, but his wife Pam, and they had a young son then Mark, and it was just a wonderful 3 year experience being in Atlanta, working in a career that I really enjoyed, and then watching my brother play football on the weekends.
Oh my word, what a gift. And talk about there's no coincidences in my book. So I just think that's all sorts of blessings right there.
I think you're right. I think I've always said the Lord has a plan, and it is what it is, and that was just one of the neat things about it. And he was a very good football player, and because of that, we decided, we really get along with each other, which is a wonderful thing as well. And we wanted to be ultimately back in Wyoming and try to have a business there. And so real estate busted like it does so many times, just like the oil business, and it busted in the mid 70s. And so I decided to go back to Wyoming, but about the same time, Nick goes in the expansion draft to the Seattle Seahawks. So we came back to Wyoming, and I was helping a friend of mine out, U.S. Energy Corp, doing some work in Colorado. And then I went to work for Bechtel, which is my engineering degree helped me again there at Green River, working in that soda ash industry and building a process plant. And that was a great job. And I really had a real career with Bechtel. But then after that job was completed, they said, Eli, we want you to be a superintendent for us and do a job here, but ultimately we want you to go to Abu Dhabi, which is in the Middle East. And I thought,
Wow.
Abu Dhabi or Manita, Wyoming, Shoshoni, I thought, well, I think I'm going to stay in Wyoming. And that was a real career change and direction for me. And it just had such long-lasting effects on my life. I mean, the political side, my wonderful wife, my family, my brother, business, all of that, by choosing to stay in Wyoming instead of going to Abu Dhabi. Great choice.
My goodness, to be able to say, you know what, I'd rather stay in Wyoming than take a job halfway across the world. That's honestly a difficult choice, but obviously it was the direction that you needed to be in your life. What was your job? I'm very curious about the soda ash industry because I know it's made a lot of news lately. And we're becoming more and more aware of Wyoming's place in that industry. When you were there, was that really kind of when people were starting to figure out this is a big deal and this could mean a lot for Wyoming?
Well, I think by then it had already figured out it was a very, very big deal for Wyoming. Of course, they have the world's largest natural trona deposits, of which they produce soda ash. And so what I did as a Bechtel engineer was we were building a new plant to help with their processing facility. So I was an engineer making sure that the whole big plant got put together from the electrical perspective. And that's what we did. And we put the plant together and got it fired up and running. It was called Mono One, I believe. And of course, that FMC plant back then is now called Genesis today, and it's still operating. And Cortrona is a wonderful thing for Wyoming and those workers down there and the mines and the jobs and the salaries. It was good. It was a great year and a half. But the other thing too about it, Wendy, it was there are not a lot of jobs and opportunities in Wyoming. It's one of the things you can talk about as a young man, as a career, middle age, whatever. The opportunities are limited. And when I decided to stay in Wyoming, well, we really didn't have a job, quote, where I could go to work for somebody. And so that's when Nick and I decided, well, uranium. It looks like it's going to do it's really a thing that I've always believed in, nuclear power. It's a great thing for a lot of reasons in our country and the world. So then we decided to get in our own business back then in the uranium industry. And my uncle Mike Sweeler was a lot of help, a guy named Jack Larson. So we had some people that were kind of helping me out a little bit. And then we started our businesses back in 1975 or 6, 7, something like that, Nick and I.
And of course, uranium, again, now a very hot topic with the alternative energies that everybody's looking for. Uranium is once again in the spotlight. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think we went away from it for a while and let it be, and now it's got a resurgence?
Well, I've always been a proponent of nuclear power. I think it's safe. I think it's clean. And all of the reasons we should be doing it. And years ago, when I was in the industry, I was even more supportive. But in politics, I was always very supportive. 3 Mile Island, what happened, 1980 or whatever it was really devastating to the industry and very, very, I think, misleading because since then we've had all these plants going and we've had Chernobyl and other things that happened, but the anti-nuclear group is that group I've never agreed with. I think nuclear power has a real place in America, a real place in Wyoming, and we have fortunate enough to have the reserves and we can mine it. We don't have the power plants, but the rest of the country does. What? We have 104 of them. They ought to be operating. They're safe. They're efficient. If you believe in global warming, whatever, and what you're doing with CO2 put in the air, it's the most efficient one from that perspective. So I've always been a big proponent of nuclear power. Back when I was so much in favor of it, people just, politically, I was on the outs with a certain group of people, but I stuck by my guns. I thought it was great for the country. And guess what? Here we are. And it's going to be really important in our future. When I say our future, Wyoming's and the United States.
You're being vindicated here. This is your
I
your
never
your
thought of it that way,
predictions.
but yeah, I ran statewide and got beat up on that issue of nuclear power and used fuel rods and all that. I got beat up pretty good over that. Looking back, maybe I was more right than wrong.
Well, obviously, it didn't hurt your political career too badly because you ended up serving one of the most lengthy uh, periods of time in the Wyoming legislature, not just in one house, but in both. Tell us about your decision to get into politics. In 1980, 1986 is when you started running?
Yeah, 1986. I've told this story before, and some of the viewers may be bored with it, but I really had no idea that I wanted to be involved in politics. And in fact, my wife, God bless Lorraine, what a wonderful lady, the love of my life. She said, "We can do anything you want to do, Eli, but never get into politics." Well, I never really thought about it, and so my mother, she's anyway, she's very, very, very love Wyoming, love politics and all that. And so she organized a write-in. And of course, at the time, because of my family, I happened to be a Democrat. And so I was written in as a Democrat. Of course, Fremont County, very Republican back even in 1986. And so I think I had 5 or 6 or 7 votes, something like that. But, we had the countywide representation. So that was enough. The number of votes was enough to get me on the ballot. So I
Wow.
thought, I've never done this. And we talked about it and visited with Lorraine and my family. And we thought, one of the things that I didn't want to do is look back and say, why didn't I try it? That happened at other things, other times in my life on various things. So I thought, I'll give it a try. There's no way I'm going to be able to beat these Republicans in a Republican district. And so we campaigned, and Mom worked hard, Lorraine worked hard, we all worked hard, and we got elected. And that in the county wide back then as a Democrat.
I think that the fact that your mother was the one pushing you to do it just absolutely is amazing. Your mother sounds like quite the character and the mover and shaker.
Yeah, she was mothers are so special for all of us, and she was just a special, unique lady. Loved America, loved the arms. Yeah, she was a good one to have as a mentor, and she kind of nudged me along. And a lot of time, I can remember one time in the house. I'm really conservative in a lot of ways, but particularly fiscally. And we didn't have much money. We most of the time I was in politics, we didn't have any money. And there was a bill about I think funding the arts, and it was $600,000, a lot of money. So I got up and said, maybe we should be thinking about this. Maybe you don't want to do it. Well, one of my colleagues called my mother. Did you realize what Eli's doing to the art budget? No, what's he doing? We got to have art. So I got a phone call from mother.
That
Anyway,
is
I think
fabulous.
that
So did you
passed.
change your vote then on that one?
Well, I listened to mother. Let's just put it that way. She had great advice. But
That's
it was a great run in the House. I started as a Democrat. A lot of times I'm asked, why did I leave the party? I never felt like I thought the party left me. My values today are the same that I had really back then. Business oriented, less government, lower taxes, all of the things that Republicans believed in. And a lot of the debates when I was a Democrat, I was debating for Republican ideas with the Republican Party. And pretty soon it just became evident that I was in the wrong place. And a good friend of mine, Deemer True, who's still a great friend today, we met each other at Boy State, said, you ought to be a Republican. I said, what? And I thought about it and looked at what I did, what I think philosophically, and looked at all of that and said, you're right, I'm in the wrong party. So I left. And it was a little controversial from some of the members of the Democrats, but it was a good move.
And your constituents obviously followed you.
Well, I had, as a Democrat, I was running, we went to single member districts and I ran as a Democrat in a Republican district. And, that's the beauty of Wyoming. For whatever reason, they vote for the person. And I was fortunate enough to be elected as a Democrat in a Republican district. But then when I switched to Republicans, then it made it easier to campaign. And I'll never forget, I just never had any desire to really be in leadership. I just thought it was great to work with the bills and do those kind of things. And I was approached to become the majority floor leader after I'd only been a Republican for maybe one term or one session, something like that. I can't remember. I said, I don't know. And anyway, decided to do it, and then went on to be the speaker, and then later on to jump over to the Senate. I just was so blessed to be able to represent a district like Riverton, District 55 for the House, and then Senate District 26. Great constituents. They loved Wyoming. Our philosophies were almost in sync on everything. Now there was a few differences, but clearly it was where I needed to be, and I had the distinct pleasure and privilege of representing him for a lot of years. It was a good run.
Now there was a 6 year gap between your at the end of your time in the House before you ran for the Senate. What'd you do in that 6 years?
Well, part of it was, when you're speaker, you step down. That tradition, I honored that tradition. And then I always thought about, I think the best job in the world is to be a U.S. senator, but the timing it's all about timing, and my timing wasn't right. And so the job for governor, that run opened up. So I ran for governor, and it was a good race. In fact, there was a crowded primary in the Republican Party, and it was intense. They always are, and survived the primary with a pretty strong vote. But then I ran against a quality candidate friend of mine when we were Democrats, and it was a close race, real close, and we lost, but probably a blessing in disguise because I had some health issues that probably wouldn't have come up if I had been elected, and who knows what might have happened. So we understood that, dealt with the health issues, and took us a while to recover from that. But then my colleague and a wonderful guy that loved Wyoming was Bob Peck, and he passed away. And so the appointment opened up, and I thought, there again, here we go. And so I threw my name in. I think there were 17 of us, and was fortunate enough to be chosen. And then I ran subsequently to that, and then got involved in the leadership in the Senate. It's just been a great, great honor and privilege to have served in the Wyoming legislature. That institution and the people that run and all that is just, as I traveled the country and did different things in that when I was in the leadership and looked at other states, thank goodness we are a state where we're a citizen legislature. And I've watched, the members of the legislature today, Bo and the Senate, and what he's doing, and Tara Nethercott, and those people over there are the same with the House leadership. They're citizens, and that's what it should be. They're given their time to represent, and so good for them. And Speaker Nyman and President Biden, good luck to them.
I love that you're still in touch with what's happening there. You haven't been out of the scene for too long, only about 4 years that you haven't been involved in the actual legislative process now. What are some of the things that you're watching as the legislature is going on now? What are some of the different issues that you're paying attention to that really are things that are close to your heart?
Well, when you spend 28 years, it really becomes part of your life. I mean, you could argue it kind of drives your life, and a lot of times it does. So just what I took from that is the love I have for Wyoming, what I think makes Wyoming work. Excuse me. And it's really the people and what they do, and it's not easy to make a living in Wyoming, and the issues they're tough issues, and what's going on with the issues. And so I've always been a very pro-business candidate and believe that we ought to properly develop our resources. So I've been on the opposite side to what I would call the nihilistic obstructionists that, want to stop a lot of stuff. And there's a place to have conservation, but not shut down. So I've always been one of those who believe we ought to have the proper development. And as we did that, I think that needs to be continued. So I'm watching those kind of issues. I've always been one that I'm a conservative, like I mentioned before, and so I like lower taxes, less taxes. I've never been in favor of an income tax. We had a chance to pass it when I was in the Senate. We said no to the Senate, right thing to do. And so this property tax issue is really interesting. Wyoming, we were really a three-legged stool in terms of our revenues. And I'm not going to try to preach to the existing legislature because they know what's going on. They're going to do a good job. But you got our permanent mineral trust fund and the money we get off the interest off of that. That's one leg. You have sales tax and property tax, which is another leg. And then you have mineral taxes that drives our state. And minerals always pay such a huge part of it. And now there's this big discussion about, taxes on homes. And why would not people want to have less taxes on their homes? So they've done a lot of good things in that regard, but they've got to be very careful when they start deciding they're going to eliminate totally property taxes in one part, or what are they going to do about the mineral side of it, or what are they going to do about funding education? I think education, we spend too much money on it. I've always felt that way on K through 12. But before you start worrying about, the reduction side of it, you better be sure that you understand the revenue stream and how that money gets to the education. And so the legislature is, there's a lot of new members of the House, I guess. The Senate is the deliberative body. They've been there a while. They got more experience. I really think they're going to figure it out. I really believe in the process. And if the members of both bodies support the process, represent their constituents, do what they're supposed to do, what they're elected to do, it'll work out. So I have a lot of confidence in it.
That's great. That's wonderful. We are so blessed to live where we do. Oh my goodness. There's no doubt about that. Eli, what I think is one of the fun things about your life is that, like I say, there's three members, three siblings that have gone on to do amazing things. Eli, you here in the Wyoming legislature, your brother was a football NFL hero, and your sister, Ruby Dee, was head of the Wyoming PBS for many, many years. I think that it's fantastic that three members of the same family have gone on to really excel in their fields. Tell us a little bit about what your brother and your sister have done.
Well, and I'm very proud of both of them. And Nick's 5 years younger, and Ruby's just a little bit over a year younger. They're just brothers and sisters are so important and so special. Well, our family, I think I give a lot of credit to the Sweeler family that right there in Hudson and our restaurant there and grandpa and grandma, our aunts and uncles, and then my mother, God bless mom, and my dad too, both of them. It was three kids raising them. It wasn't easy. My dad, there was no jobs in Wyoming. He had to leave, and he wasn't home a lot. Mom raised us, and she just did a wonderful job. And I'm so proud of my brother and my sister. Nick's more than a football player. He's a great businessman. He knows equipment. He just a lot of people know Nick, and he's just an all-around great guy and a good partner. We've been together for, like I said earlier, what, 45, 50 years, an absolute trust, and it's been good. And then Ruby, I thought Ruby should have been the one that should have been in politics instead of me. She's just so gifted in what she can do and the way she can write, and now she's the chairman of the National Broadcasting for Public Television in Washington. Or it's kind of funny. She got appointed by Trump the first time and by Biden the second time. And when they do that, they have an FBI background check. So this is a funny Wyoming story. So one of the persons that they were checking up on Ruby wanted to know why they wanted an RBI check. What was RBI? And Ruby said, no, that's FBI. And why are you FBI check for a background for Ruby? But oh yeah, I'm really proud of both of them. They're like me. They love Wyoming. They raise families. All of their kids are doing great. Some of Nick's kids are in business. We're still in business with my kids. Ruby's kids have all moved on to different places. Kara's in Washington, Chris in Dallas, and Chad down in Colorado Springs. All of them are doing good. It's a great, great story. And it's not unusual for Wyoming, Wendy. I mean, you could go down every community in Wyoming. There's similar stories. Their parents they worked hard, loved Wyoming, did what they did, raised kids, gave them the tools to be successful. And that's what happened with us. We were given the tools and we took advantage of it. And looking back, it's been a lot of fun and pretty successful.
And of course, you got, is it four children of your own?
I have four children. Nick's got four. Ruby's got three. Then we have our cousin. My aunt Katie passed away with a tumor, and so my mother raised her two children, Bess and Mike. So there's five of us, and so we have more extended family. But most of them are living in Wyoming, other than Ruby's kids, doing well. I've got a daughter in Salt Lake. Nick's got a daughter in Colorado. He's got a son in Colorado. Yeah, it's a Wyoming story. Like I said, it could be repeated over and over.
Well, your mom was an absolute treasure. We did a great story about her when she passed not too long ago. And my goodness, what a life she lived and what an inspiration she was.
Well, there's a lot of these ladies in Wyoming, and I look at them, and I look at Peg Coe from Cody. I look at Jean True, Win Hickey. I mean, the list goes on and on. That's just a few, and I'm sorry I could name a lot more. But just great ladies, and they did just what we've talked about: raised wonderful families. Their kids were great kids. I mean, and I look at other states. Do they have what we have? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, which is why we are so blessed. And one of the things that I love again about Cowboy State Daily is the fact that we're able to tell these stories. And these stories are meaningful not just to somebody in Fremont County, but these stories are meaningful to somebody in Johnson County or somebody in Uintah County. And that's the nature of our state. And Eli, tell me just, we're about out of time here, but I just wanted to kind of wrap up. What is your hope for the future of Wyoming, for the not just the people who are making the laws, but for the people here? What is your hope for the people of Wyoming?
It's really no different than when I got out of school, just to have the opportunity to be able to raise a family, have a good job, have, the kind of income you need and do it in a place that you really enjoy. And Wyoming brings that to the table, the outdoors, the fishing, the hunting. The job opportunities are tough. That's why we need to continue to work on the economic development side. That's always something I've always worked with all the governors. I served with 5 governors. It was the issue in every one of their campaigns. It was all of that. So just that opportunity, and I think it's being presented today. The legislature and the laws to do and what we do is a big part of it. But I think more importantly, it's the family and the people and their belief in our country and our state, and just nurture that and bring it along, and things will happen. I mean, if you get up in the morning and go to work, that's not always easy, and especially if you get up at 4 o'clock, fight the weather, da 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 da. But just hang in there because it's a great place and there's opportunities and it will work out. I'm living proof of it. I think there are a lot of people that are living proof of it in our great state, and like Cowboy Daily, and how that got started and the wonderful things that are done there. And I go to a little coffee club down here in Tucson, and everybody reads Cowboy Daily. And
Boy, in
and of course
Tucson,
Bill's
that's
doing a
great.
good job, and I like Bill and I've been friends forever. We ran against each other, and so that was a little dicey for a while, but we're good friends. He's doing a good job. Everybody is. That's a great Wyoming story. There's so many of them. So keep doing what you're doing, Wendy, and you do a great job on these interviews. But having spent 30 minutes with you, I understand. I watch them, I listen to them, and keep up the good work, and we'll keep doing what we're doing, loving our state.
That's what we need to do. Eli, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time today and enjoy the warmer weather in Tucson as opposed to Wyoming. It's good for you for being able to get out of there for a little while. But we're just glad that you have had such an impact on our state and that you represented your constituents so well. And your love for the state is obvious.
Well, it's been a real pleasure, and thanks for taking the time to visit with me. And there's a lot of great stories in Wyoming. We're lucky, and I'm lucky to be one of them.
Well, there are, and we've got so many more of these stories to tell, folks. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you, Eli, for your time today. Folks, if you know of somebody that we should talk to, somebody who's got a great Wyoming story, someone who makes an impact in their community or in the state, or who's out there taking Wyoming to the world, please let us know. We've got all the Saturdays that we can see in the future to tell these stories. So please let us know. But until then, thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week.